In a modest neighborhood on the outskirts of Boston, fate was about to weave an extraordinary tale. James Cooper, a hard-working single father struggling to make ends meet, never imagined that a rainy Tuesday evening would change his life forever. Coming home from his second job, he spots a well-dressed woman limping along the roadside, drenched and clearly in pain. Without hesitation, he offers her shelter in his humble home, a simple act of kindness that would ripple through both their lives in ways neither could imagine. What James doesn't know is that this mysterious stranger, who introduces herself simply as Marie, is actually Princess Maria Thérese von Liechtenstein, heir to a centuries-old royal legacy, hiding from a scandal that threatens to tear her. Family apart. What will happen when two worlds, separated by wealth and status, collide through an act of pure compassion? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The crayon-drawn family portrait hung proudly on the refrigerator, held by a Boston Red Sox magnate that had seen better days. 8-year-old Sarah Cooper had drawn herself holding hands with her father James, their stick-figure forms adorned with bright smiles. The empty space beside them spoke volumes, a conscious choice Sarah made in all her family drawings since her mother's departure 3 years ago. James stood at the kitchen counter, mechanically assembling Sarah's lunch for the next day. Turkey sandwich, no crust, apple slices, though they'd brown by lunchtime, a small packet of cookies he'd been saving for a special occasion. The clock on the microwave blinked 11:43 p.m., a harsh reminder of another late night after his second job. His IT support position at Davidson and Mills kept the lights on barely. The evening hours driving for rideshare services meant Sarah spent too many nights with Mrs. Martinez next door. The elderly woman was a godsend, but James knew this wasn't the life he'd imagined for his daughter. "Daddy?" Sarah's voice, small and sleep-heavy, drifted from the hallway. "You promised to check for monsters." James set down the half-wrapped sandwich and smiled, exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "Coming, Princess." Sarah's room was a carefully curated space of second-hand furniture and dollar store decorations, transformed by her imagination into a magical realm. String lights from last Christmas cast a warm glow over walls covered in her artwork. Each drawing told a story: her class, their small family, the adventures she dreamed up. "I heard something under the bed," she whispered, clutching her worn, stuffed elephant trunks. James knelt beside the bed, his knees protesting after hours of driving. "Well, let's investigate, shall we?" He made a show of lifting the dust ruffle, shining his phone's flashlight into the darkness. "Nothing here except, what's this?" He reached under, retrieving a folder of Sarah's latest art projects. She giggled, a sound that made every double shift worth it. "Those are for Parents' Day at school next week." James's heart tightened. He'd already requested the morning off, trading his lunch breaks for a week to make up the hours. "Can't wait to see them, sweetheart. Mrs. Martinez says I draw just like Mum used to," Sarah said quietly, watching his face with those observant brown eyes that missed nothing. James sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "Your mom was very artistic, but these drawings, they're all Sarah Cooper. Originals, that makes them even more special." He tucked the blanket around her shoulders, a nightly ritual that hadn't changed since she was a toddler. Sarah reached for the framed photo on her nightstand, the only one she had of her mother, taken at a beach years ago. James watched her, study it, noting how her fingers traced the edges of the frame. "Do you think she sees my drawings somehow?" "I think," James began, swallowing the hurt he still carried, "that anyone would be proud of these masterpieces. Now how about we get some sleep? You've got that math test tomorrow." Sarah nestled deeper under her covers. "Will you be here for breakfast?" 6:30 sharp. Pancakes with blueberry eyes and a bacon smile. "Promise?" "Cooper promise," he said, their special oath. He kissed her forehead and stood pausing at the doorway. "Love you to the moon. And back times infinity," Sarah finished sleepily. Back in the kitchen, James finished packing Sarah's lunch, adding a note with a badly drawn heart and a "good luck on your test" message. The refrigerator hummed in the quiet apartment, and his eyes drifted back to Sarah's family drawing. The empty space seemed to grow larger the longer he stared at it. Claire's departure had been as swift as a summer storm, there one day, gone the next. Her note had spoken of dreams deferred, of suffocation in suburban life, of needing to find herself. She'd left them with little more than questions and a hollow space that Sarah kept recreating in her artwork. James checked his phone. 4 hours. Until he needed to be up for his first job. 3 new bills in the mail. 2 cavities Sarah needed filled. 1 parent trying to be enough for a little girl who deserved the world. He sank into the worn armchair by the window, allowing himself 5 minutes of rest before tackling the dishes. Outside, rain began to fall on the streets of Boston, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the sky. The weather report had warned of storms all week, but James Cooper had no way of knowing that tomorrow's rainfall would bring more than just water to his doorstep. No way of knowing that sometimes the greatest changes come disguised as simple acts of kindness on rainy Tuesday evenings. The family portrait watched over the quiet kitchen, its empty space waiting to be filled. The windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour as James navigated his weathered Honda Civic through Boston's rain-slicked streets. His last rideshare passenger had tipped well, a rare bright spot in an otherwise grueling evening. Just 3 more blocks to Mrs. Martinez's apartment, then he could finally take Sarah home. Lightning split the sky, illuminating a figure on the roadside. A woman in a cream-colored business suit, one hand braced against a telephone pole, the other clutching what remained of an expensive-looking heel. Even from a distance, James could tell this wasn't their usual neighborhood demographic. He slowed the car, professional instincts from months of rideshare driving warring with natural caution. The woman lifted her head, and even through the rain-streaked window, he caught the flash of something vulnerable in her expression that reminded him of Sarah on her first day of school. James pulled over. "Are you all right?" he called through the passenger window, keeping a respectful distance. She limped toward the car, rain plastering her dark hair to her face. Despite her bedraggled appearance, there was an unmistakable elegance in her movements. "I've had better evenings," she admitted with a self-deprecating smile, and what James couldn't quite place as a European accent. "My shoe decided to end our relationship rather dramatically." The broken Louboutin dangled from her fingers, a single month's worth of Sarah's lunch money, James estimated. "Can I call someone for you?" Something flickered across her face. "Fear? My phone died, and I'm afraid I'm rather lost." She glanced over her shoulder, a gesture so quick James almost missed it. "Would you happen to know of any hotels nearby?" Another flash of lightning, followed by immediate thunder. The storm was directly overhead now. "The nearest hotel is in Back Bay," James said. "That's about 5 miles from here." He hesitated, then made a decision he hoped he wouldn't regret. "Look, I have a spare room. It's nothing fancy, but it's dry, and you can at least wait out the storm and charge your phone." She studied him for a long moment, weighing something behind those remarkable green eyes. "You're very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose." "Daddy! Is she a princess?" Sarah's voice piped up from the back seat, making them both jump. James had almost forgotten she was there. She'd been so quiet. The woman's laugh held a strange note. "No, dear one, just a very wet stranger with very poor choice in footwear. I'm Sarah. You can have my umbrella. It's got cats on it." James watched the woman's face soften as she looked at Sarah. Whatever calculation she'd been making seemed to resolve itself. "I'm Marie," she said, then added almost as an afterthought, "Just Marie." "James Cooper," he offered, then popped the trunk. "There's a blanket back there if you want it. We're about 10 minutes from home." Marie slid into the passenger seat with a grace that seemed at odds with her drenched state. Sarah immediately handed her the promised umbrella, even though they were already in the car. "It's my lucky umbrella," Sarah explained seriously. "The cats are magic." "Are they indeed?" Marie's accent became more pronounced when she spoke to Sarah. "Then I shall treasure it." As James drove, he caught glimpses of their unexpected guest in the rearview mirror. Despite her disheveled appearance, there was something regal in her posture, the way she held herself. Her hands, he noticed, were manicured but not ornate, practical elegance rather than showy wealth. "What brings you to this neighborhood?" he asked casually. "Sometimes," Marie said after a careful pause, "one needs to step away from life for a moment, to gain perspective." She turned to look out the window, effectively ending that line of conversation. Sarah filled the silence with cheerful chatter about her upcoming math test, and Marie responded with genuine interest, asking questions that made Sarah beam. By the time they pulled up to their apartment building, the child had extracted a promise from their guest to help her practice multiplication tables. "It's not much," James said as he helped Marie from the car, noting her wince as she put weight on her right ankle. "But it's home." Marie looked up at the modest brick building with what seemed like wistful appreciation. "Sometimes," she said softly, "the simplest homes hold the greatest treasures." The broken designer heel lay forgotten in the trunk, a small piece of evidence that their lives were about to change in ways none of them could imagine. Above them, the storm began to ease, but Marie's gaze still darted to the shadows between. Parked cars, searching for something or someone before she followed them inside. The leather-bound cookbook appeared on the third morning of Marie's stay, retrieved from her mysteriously salvaged handbag. Its pages were worn with use, corners softened by time, margins filled with handwritten notes in elegant script. Sarah sat at the kitchen counter, watching in fascination as Marie's fingers traced the foreign words with familiar affection. "These were my grandmother's recipes," Marie explained, her voice warm with memory. "She believed that true nobility lies not in what we have, but in what we share with others." James, rushing to leave for his IT job, paused at the unexpected smell of fresh pastry. The kitchen counter, usually cluttered with hastily made toast and instant coffee, now hosted a spread of delicate European breakfast pastries. "You didn't have to do this," he said, even as his stomach rumbled appreciatively. Marie looked up from where she was showing Sarah how to fold dough. "Consider it a small repayment for your kindness. Besides," she added with a slight smile, "I find baking therapeutic." The way she handled the dough spoke of years of practice, yet there was something almost defiant in her expertise, as if each perfectly crafted pastry was a rebellion against some unseen expectation. "These are like the ones in the fancy bakery." "Window," Sarah exclaimed, biting into a chocolate-filled croissant, "the one where Daddy says we can only look, not buy." James felt his face warm, but Marie smoothly intervened. "Then we shall make our own bakery here. Would you like to learn how?" Sarah's enthusiastic nod sent crumbs flying. James watched as Marie gently showed his daughter how to hold the rolling pin, her patience seemingly endless. There was an ease to their interaction that both warmed and worried him. "Your ankle seems better," he observed, noting how she moved around the kitchen with only the slightest favoring of her right foot. "Yes, though perhaps I should rest it one more day," Marie replied, not meeting his eyes. If that's not an imposition." James studied her for a moment. The sprain seemed minor for someone so reluctant to leave. But there was something in her expression, a shadow of anxiety that made him nod. "Stay as long as you need." Throughout the day, while James was at work, Marie transformed their modest kitchen into what Sarah dubbed their royal bakery. Mrs. Martinez, invited over for afternoon coffee, declared the apricot tart better than my sister's, and she trained in Paris. But it wasn't just the baking. James returned home to find Sarah's homework completed, her multiplication tables mastered. Through some game Marie had invented involving pastry decoration. The apartment held a new warmth, filled with the scent of butter and sugar and something less tangible, possibility, perhaps. That evening, after Sarah was asleep, James found Marie at the kitchen table, her cookbook open but forgotten as she stared out the window. The streetlights cast shadows across her face, highlighting a melancholy he'd noticed surfacing in quiet moments. "Rough day?" he asked, sitting across from her. Marie's fingers traced the cookbook's worn edges. "I was thinking about choices, how the simplest ones can change everything." She looked around their small kitchen with what seemed like genuine contentment. "This life you've built with Sarah, it's beautiful in its authenticity." "It's not much," James started, but Marie shook her head. "You misunderstand. This—" She gestured to the homework on the fridge, the mismatched coffee mugs, Sarah's drawings. "This is real, pure." Something like longing crept into her voice. "Do you know how rare that is?" James thought of the way she'd checked her phone earlier, only to quickly hide it when Sarah bounded in, of the careful way she avoided windows when cars drove by slowly, of how she seemed both completely at ease in their humble kitchen and somehow like a rare bird that had sought temporary shelter from a storm. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "real doesn't mean easy." Marie's smile held a weight he couldn't quite understand. "No, but perhaps it's worth more because of that." She stood, gathering her cookbook. "Thank you, James, for not asking questions." "Everyone's entitled to their secrets," he replied, even as his own curiosity gnawed at him. "Though Sarah's convinced you're a genuine princess in disguise." Marie's laugh held a strange note, almost like relief. "What a wonderful imagination she has." She paused at the guest room door. I hope when my secrets eventually come out, you'll remember this moment. Remember that everything else might be complicated, but this, my gratitude, my respect for your family, this is real." James watched her disappear into the guest room, her words settling like the dust of powdered sugar on his shoulders. In the quiet kitchen, the cookbook lay forgotten on the table, a recipe for traditional Liechtenstein Christmas cookies marking the page. The burner phone buzzed at 3 a.m., its vibration against the hardwood floor of the guest room barely audible. Marie retrieved it from beneath the bed, her hands trembling slightly as she read the encrypted message. "Security breach. L family photos. Leaked. Media circling. Stay dark." She deleted the message and stared into the darkness, listening to the quiet sounds of the Cooper household at night. The gentle hum of the refrigerator, the distant rumble of late-night trains, Sarah's occasional, sleepy murmur through the thin walls. Simple sounds that had become unexpectedly precious. A car drove by slowly, headlights sweeping across her window. Marie instinctively pressed herself against the wall, heart racing until the vehicle passed. But the next one lingered, and through a crack in the curtains, she caught the unmistakable glint of a camera lens. Morning brought fresh challenges. James was sorting mail at the kitchen table when Marie emerged, dark circles beneath her eyes, betraying her sleepless night. "Everything okay?" he asked, looking up from a stack of bills. "Thought I heard you moving around last night." "Couldn't sleep," she said, forcing a smile. "Old habits from a different time zone." Sarah bounded in, backpack already on. "Marie! Can you braid my hair like yesterday? Jenny said it looked like a crown." "Of course, Liebling." The endearment slipped out before Marie could catch it. She saw James's eyebrows lift slightly, but was saved from explanation by a knock at the door. James opened it to find Mrs. Martinez, looking uncharacteristically concerned. "James, dear, there are men in suits asking questions at the coffee shop. About your guest." She lowered her voice. "They look official, government type." Marie's hands stilled in Sarah's hair, the half-formed braid unraveling. James caught her expression in the hallway mirror, raw fear quickly masked by practiced composure. "Probably just immigration doing their rounds," James said smoothly. But his eyes met Marie's in the mirror. Questions burned there unasked. After he left for work and Sarah for school, Marie paced the apartment. Her burner phone buzzed again. Private investigator inquiring at Boston hotels. Maintain position if secure. Extraction team standing by. She deleted this message too, then noticed Sarah's latest drawing on the refrigerator. It showed 3 figures now. James, Sarah, and a new addition wearing what looked like a triangle on her head. A crown, Marie realized, with a mixture of amusement and dread. The afternoon paper, delivered by a sympathetic Mrs. Martinez, made her blood run cold. A small article, buried on page 6, European royalty in crisis, princess's disappearance raises questions about succession. Marie was so focused on the article that she almost missed the sound of expensive shoes on cheap linoleum. She shoved the paper into the recycling bin, just as James returned home early, his face tight with concern. "Interesting day at work," he said carefully. "Had some men in dark suits come by the IT department, asking if anyone had helped a foreign woman with computer troubles lately." He leaned against the counter, studying her. "Want to tell me what's really going on, Marie? Or should I say, please," she cut him off, voice cracking. "Please don't finish that sentence. The moment you say it, everything changes, and I'm not ready for that yet." Sarah's key scraped in the lock before James could respond. Marie watched something shift in his expression, protection for his daughter winning out over curiosity. "Daddy! Marie! Look what I drew in art class!" Sarah burst in, wielding a new picture. "It's us at a castle. Mrs. Kelly said I have a great imagination, but I told her Marie taught me about real castles in Europe and—" "Sarah, sweetie," James interrupted gently, "why don't you get started on your homework? I need to talk to Marie for a minute." Once Sarah was in her room, James turned back to Marie. "I don't need to know everything, but I need to know if my daughter is safe. If we're safe." Marie touched the hidden phone in her pocket, thinking of the extraction team waiting in the shadows, of the photographers hunting for a story, of the choices that had led her here, to this humble kitchen where, paradoxically, she felt safer than she had in years. "The only danger," she said finally, "is to me, and to anyone who knows too much about me." She met his gaze steadily. "I would never bring harm to your family, James. I would leave first. And if leaving would bring you harm." The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Outside, another unmarked car drove by slowly, and Marie instinctively stepped away from the window. "Then that would be my choice to make," she whispered. But her eyes strayed to Sarah's door, betraying how much harder that choice had become. The library card was crisp and new, Sarah's careful signature marking her first official document. She held it like a precious gem as they walked through the towering shelves of the Boston Public Library, Marie guiding her through the children's section with the ease of someone who had grown up surrounded by books. "My father always said that libraries are the true palaces of the world," Marie explained, running her fingers along the spines. "Anyone can be royal here, among the stories." Sarah clutched her new card tighter. "Can we get as many as we want?" 6. "At a time," Marie replied, then added with a conspiratorial wink, "though I suspect we'll be returning quite frequently." They spent the afternoon exploring worlds between pages. Marie's knowledge seemed endless. She spoke of European folklore as if she'd lived it, described castle architecture with intimate familiarity, and answered Sarah's countless questions with the patience of someone who understood the value of curiosity. "This one," Marie said, pulling out a worn copy of The Little Princess, "was my favorite when I was your age." "Was it?" James's voice came from behind them. He'd arrived early to pick them up, watching their literary expedition with a mixture of gratitude and guarded concern. Marie's smile faltered slightly. "Yes, though perhaps it hit a bit too close to home at times." The drive home was quiet. Sarah, absorbed in her new books, Marie lost in thought. James kept glancing at their guest in the rearview mirror, noting how she relaxed once they were away from the library's security cameras and busy streets. At home, Sarah spread her literary treasures across the living room floor. "Can we read together, like a real book club?" "A royal book club," Marie corrected gently, settling onto the worn couch. Every story deserves to be read with proper ceremony. James watched from the kitchen as Marie helped Sarah sound out difficult words, their heads bent together over the pages. His daughter was blossoming under Marie's attention, showing curiosity and confidence he hadn't seen before. "She's reading above her grade level," Marie observed later, after Sarah had gone to bed. "She has a natural gift for language, like her mother," James said quietly, then immediately regretted it. But Marie didn't press about Claire. Instead, she retrieved something from her bag, a leather-bound journal. "I got this for Sarah today. For her own stories." She hesitated. "I hope I'm not overstepping." James took the journal, feeling the quality of the paper, seeing the careful way Marie had inscribed Sarah's name on the first page. The gesture struck him suddenly. This woman, clearly from wealth and privilege, choosing such a personal gift for his daughter. "You're good with her," he said finally. "Too good, maybe." Marie's face clouded. "You think I'm going to hurt her by leaving, aren't you?" The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Marie stood, moving to the window where Sarah's new books caught the evening light. "When I was young," she said carefully, "I had every privilege, every material comfort, but the people in my life, they came and went according to protocol, not love." She turned to face him. "What you and Sarah have, this pure, unconditional bond, it's worth more than any title or treasure." "And what about what you and Sarah have?" James challenged gently. "Because she adores you, Marie, or whatever your real name is." Marie's composure cracked slightly. "My real name comes with obligations that would take me away from this, from her, from—" She stopped herself, but James heard the unspoken word, "from you." "So why stay?" he asked. "Why risk getting closer when you know you'll have to leave?" Marie touched Sarah's library card, which had been left on the coffee table. "Because sometimes the sweetest chapters are the ones we know can't last forever." She met his eyes. "But that doesn't make them less real, or less important." James stepped closer, close enough to catch the faint scent of the lavender soap Sarah had insisted on buying Marie at the drugstore. "And if someone wants more than just a chapter?" For a moment, the air between them crackled with possibility. Marie swayed slightly, as if drawn forward by some invisible force. Then a car door slammed outside, and she stepped back, composure sliding back into place like a well-worn mask. "Some stories," she whispered, "aren't ours to change, no matter how much we might wish to rewrite them." She retreated to her room, leaving James alone with the library card on the table. A simple piece of plastic that somehow represented everything complicated about their situation. A card that granted access to countless stories while their own story remained unwritten, hovering between reality and fairy tale, waiting for someone brave enough to turn the page. The security footage from the corner bodega played on Mr. Patel's ancient monitor in grainy black and white. 3 men in dark suits, their movements too precise to be casual shoppers, methodically canvassing the neighborhood. Marie watched the screen from behind the counter, her fingers gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles went white. "They came asking questions," Mr. Patel said quietly, "about a foreign lady staying nearby. Showed fancy badges, but something felt wrong." He adjusted his glasses, studying Marie's face. "I told them nothing. My family knows something about running from powerful people." "Thank you," Marie whispered, her careful composure cracking slightly. "I should go before they return." But as she turned to leave, one of the suits appeared at the shop's entrance. Marie ducked behind a display of snack chips, heart pounding. Mr. Patel smoothly moved to block the man's view. "Can I help you, sir?" "Security services," the man said, in accented German. "We're looking for—" The shop's bell chimed again as James walked in, Sarah bouncing beside him. He took in the scene instantly, Marie hidden, the suited man, Mr. Patel's protective stance. "Marie!" Sarah called out cheerfully, spotting her behind the chips. "Are you getting snacks too?" The suited man's head snapped around, but James was faster. He swept Sarah up into his arms, spinning her toward the candy display. "Let's get your favorite chocolate, princess. The one Mom used to like?" The deliberate mention of Sarah's mother triggered exactly what James had hoped. An excited stream of chatter about Claire's preferred candies, giving Marie precious seconds to slip into the store's back room. Mr. Patel engaged the suited man in a lengthy discussion about his license to operate security cameras, his voice carrying clearly to where Marie pressed herself against the storage room wall, trembling. Footsteps approached, and she tensed until James's familiar voice whispered, "Side door. Mrs. Martinez is waiting in her car." Marie caught his. "And James, later," he said firmly. "Sarah's distracting him with a very detailed story about gummy bears. Go." The next hour passed in a blur of back alleys and circular driving routes, Mrs. Martinez handling her ancient Volvo with surprising skill. "My Eduardo drove getaway in Cuba," she explained with a wink. "Before the revolution. I learned from the best." When they finally returned to the apartment, Sarah was already in bed, the excitement of their special secret mission having worn her out. James found Marie in the kitchen, staring at the security footage Mr. Patel had copied to her phone. "They're getting closer," she said without looking up. "The man today, he's from the Royal Guard. They're not supposed to operate on foreign soil, which means this is serious," James finished. He sat across from her. "Those weren't police badges they showed Mr. Patel, were they?" Marie's laugh held no humor. "Let's just say diplomatic immunity covers a multitude of sins." She finally met his eyes. "You put yourself at risk today, you and Sarah. I never meant for—" "Hey," James interrupted gently. "Sarah thought it was a fun game, and I've gotten pretty good at protecting people I care about." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Marie's phone buzzed with another encrypted message, but she didn't reach for it. "I care about you too," she whispered. "Both of you. More than I should. More than I'm allowed to." "Allowed by whom?" James challenged. "The same people who send men to hunt you through foreign cities?" Marie's fingers traced the outline of her phone, where the grainy images showed. "The suited men's methodical search. There are obligations I was born into, responsibilities I cannot simply abandon because I've found—" She gestured helplessly at the humble kitchen, its walls covered with Sarah's drawings. What you've found," James said carefully, "is a family who sees you, not your obligations or your responsibilities. Just you." For a moment, Marie's royal composure cracked completely. She reached across the table, her fingers intertwining with his. "And that is exactly why I have to leave, before those men find me here. Before they discover that the best hiding place I've ever known is this simple apartment with its paper-thin walls and endless love." James tightened his grip on her hand. "Or you could stay. Fight whatever it is you're running from. We'd stand with you." Marie's smile held centuries of duty and tradition. "My dearest James," she said softly, "some battles cannot be won simply because our hearts wish it so." Outside, a dark car cruised past their building, its tinted windows reflecting the streetlights like watchful eyes. The security footage played, silently on Marie's phone, a grainy reminder that their borrowed time was running out. The vintage record player appeared on a Saturday afternoon, rescued from Mrs. Martinez's storage and dusted off with reverence. Its wooden cabinet bore the scars of time, but when Marie lifted the needle onto the vinyl, the scratchy opening notes of Strauss's Blue Danube filled the small living room with surprising clarity. "Dad, you're supposed to bow first," Sarah instructed from her perch on the couch, consulting the dance etiquette book Marie had been teaching her from. The father-daughter dance at her school was a week away, and Sarah had insisted on doing things properly. James executed an awkward bow, feeling foolish until he caught Marie's approving smile. She'd pushed the furniture against the walls, creating a makeshift dance floor in their cramped living room. "The waltz," Marie explained, her accent growing more pronounced as it often did when she spoke of traditions, is not just a dance. It's a conversation between partners, a story told in three-quarter time. She demonstrated a simple box step, her movements graceful despite her casual clothes, borrowed jeans and one of James's old sweaters that somehow looked elegant on her frame. "I'm going to step on everyone's feet," James admitted, watching her float across their worn carpet. Marie stopped in front of him, eyes twinkling. "Then we shall have to prevent that, won't we? For Sarah's sake, of course." "Of course," James echoed, his mouth suddenly dry as Marie took his hand and placed it at her waist. "The key is not in the steps," she said softly, positioning their joined hands at shoulder height. "It's in the connection between partners. Trust. Once you have that, the rest follows naturally." James was acutely aware of her proximity, the lavender scent of her hair, the warmth of her hand in his. "Easy for you to say. You probably learned this in princess school." Marie's rhythm faltered slightly at the word princess, but she recovered smoothly. "Actually, I learned from my grandfather. He said dancing was democracy in motion. Titles and status fall away, leaving only the music and two people moving as one." She guided him through the basic steps, her touch gentle but sure. James focused on not stepping on her feet, counting under his breath. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Sarah chanted helpfully from the couch, swaying to the music. "Stop counting," Marie murmured. "Listen to the music. Feel the rhythm. Like waves on a shore, in and out, rise and fall." Gradually, James relaxed into the movement. The apartment disappeared, the bills on the counter, the work emails waiting for responses, the mysterious cars still occasionally cruising their street. There was only Marie, the music, and this moment suspended in time. "There," she said softly, "you're dancing." James met her eyes, saw something unguarded there that made his heart skip. "I have a good teacher." The record crackled as it transitioned to a slower piece. Without discussing it, they drew closer, their steps becoming less formal, more intimate. Marie's head tilted slightly toward his shoulder, not quite resting there, but wanting to. "I wish," she began, then stopped herself. "What? I wish this." "I could be real," she whispered, so quietly he almost missed it. "This life, these moments. Sometimes I pretend." James tightened his hold on her waist. "This is real, Marie. Whatever comes next, whatever you're running from, this right here is real." She looked up at him, and for a moment all her careful walls crumbled. James saw the loneliness behind the grace, the weight of whatever destiny she was trying to escape. Slowly, drawn by something stronger than protocol or caution, he leaned, head down as she tilted her face up. "Now spin her, Daddy." Sarah's excited voice shattered the moment. "Like in the movies." Marie stepped back smoothly, composure sliding back into place like a well-practiced curtsy. But her cheeks were flushed, her breathing uneven. "Yes, let's practice that spin," she said briskly. "Sarah, would you like to demonstrate?" Sarah bounded off the couch, and soon the apartment was filled with her giggles as both adults took turns spinning her until she was dizzy with joy. Later, after Sarah was in bed, James found Marie in the living room, gently running her fingers over the record player's wooden surface. "Keep it," Mrs. Martinez had insisted earlier. "Eduardo would have wanted it to be used for dancing again." "Thank you," Marie said without turning around, "for letting me share this with her, with both of you." "Marie, please," she interrupted softly, "don't say anything that will make tomorrow harder." She retired to her room, leaving James alone, with the record player and the lingering scent of lavender. He picked up Sarah's dance etiquette book, opened to a page about royal balls and proper protocol. The illustration showed a prince and princess waltzing, their crowns glinting in imaginary candlelight. For the first time, he let himself truly consider what it would mean if the whispered rumors about Marie's identity were true, what it would mean for Sarah, who had already lost one mother, what it would mean for his own heart, which was no longer pretending this was temporary. The record had stopped playing, but in the quiet apartment, James could still feel the rhythm of their dance. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like a heartbeat counting down their remaining time together. The royal signet ring caught the morning light as Marie turned it over in her fingers, its weight familiar, yet suddenly burdensome. She hadn't worn it since arriving at the Coopers, keeping it wrapped in silk and hidden in her bag. But today's headlines made her grip it like a lifeline. Liechtenstein crisis deepens. Princess's absence threatens historic treaty. Her burner phone buzzed with increasing frequency. The Belgian delegation arrives Thursday. Your presence is non-negotiable. Then the treaty falls apart without the marriage alliance. Finally, from her younger sister, father's health is declining. Please come home. Marie pressed the ring to her lips, a childhood habit for seeking comfort, then froze as Sarah's voice came from the doorway. That's pretty. Is it magic? Quickly tucking the ring away, Marie managed a smile. What makes you think it's magical? Because you look at it the way Daddy looks at Mom's old pictures, like it hurts, but you can't stop. Marie patted the bed beside her, and Sarah climbed up, her school uniform already wrinkled, though the day had barely begun. Sometimes, Marie said carefully, growing up means wearing things that feel very heavy, even if they look beautiful to others. Like when Daddy wears his tie for important meetings? Something like that. Marie smoothed Sarah's collar. Speaking of which, we should get you to school. The drive was quiet, James sensing Marie's mood. She sat in the back with Sarah, helping her practice for her vocabulary test, but her responses were automated, her mind clearly elsewhere. At the school gates, Sarah hugged her with unexpected fierceness. You'll still be here for the father-daughter. Dance, right? You promised to help with my hair. Marie met James's eyes in the rearview mirror. I'll do my very best, Liebling. The endearment slipped out again, and this time James recognized it. The same way his mother's German neighbors used to speak to their children. The same way the Liechtenstein royal family was known to address their public in informal settings. Back at the apartment, Marie's phone buzzed again. Her hands shook slightly as she read the message. The media has traced you to Boston, James said quietly. Haven't they? Marie sank onto the couch, the weight of her hidden ring seeming to pull her down. There's a treaty, she said finally. One that would unite several small European nations in an economic alliance. Years of negotiation, countless lives potentially improved. She looked up at him, all hanging on a marriage arrangement that I ran away from. James sat beside her, not touching, but close enough to feel her trembling. An arranged marriage in 2025? A political union, she corrected quietly. Between the Princess of Liechtenstein and the Duke of Luxembourg. Traditional, respectable, completely logical. Her laugh held no humor. I should be honored. Instead, I'm hiding in a small Boston apartment, teaching an 8-year-old girl to waltz and pretending I can outrun centuries of duty. Is he cruel? James asked, dreading the answer. This Duke? No, Marie whispered. He's perfectly kind, perfectly suitable, perfectly arranged. Like everything else in my life has been arranged since birth, until... She gestured at their surroundings. The cramped living room with its second-hand furniture and crayon drawings. The kitchen still smelling of burnt toast from Sarah's breakfast. Attempts, the dance steps marked out in tape on the carpet. Until you showed me what it means to live unscripted. James reached for her hand, then stopped himself. Maria Thérese, she corrected softly. Princess Maria Thérese Gabriella von Liechtenstein. Though I much prefer how you say Marie. The confession hung between them, finally spoken aloud. Outside, a car door slammed, making Marie jump. But it was just Mrs. Martinez returning from her morning walk. My father is ill, Marie continued, each word seeming to cost her. The treaty signing is in 3 days. My sister has covered for me as long as she can, but She pulled out the ring, its gold and garnets glowing warmly. This ring has been worn by the women of my family for 12 generations. Each of them did her duty without question. And what about love? James asked quietly. Marie's smile trembled. Love is a luxury royalty rarely gets to choose. She stood, squaring her shoulders in a way he now recognized as inherited poise. I should pack. The longer I stay, the harder. Her voice broke as she spotted Sarah's latest drawing on the fridge. It showed 3 figures holding hands beneath, a crown-shaped sun, with the carefully printed words, "My family." James stood too, close enough to catch her if she fell, but respecting the invisible barrier her revelation had erected. "At least stay for Sarah's dance," he said softly. "Give us that much time to say goodbye properly." Marie touched the drawing with trembling fingers, her signet ring catching the light like a tear. 3 more days, she whispered. Just 3 more days to pretend this could have been my happily ever after. The local newspaper sat innocently on their doorstep, its headline making Marie's heart stop. Boston's mystery Good Samaritan, local IT worker houses stranded woman. The article was small, tucked between ads for carpet cleaning and a church. Bake sale, but its implications loomed large. Area resident James Cooper, 34, has drawn attention for his act of kindness toward an unidentified European woman, the article read. Cooper, a single father known in the Brighton neighborhood for his community involvement, offered shelter to the well-dressed stranger during last month's storms. Neighbors described the woman as refined and possibly foreign nobility, though Cooper maintains she is simply a traveler in need. Marie's hands crumpled the paper's edges as she read Mrs. Martinez's quoted observation. She has a way about her, like someone from those fancy European shows on Netflix, but more real, you know. The way she is with little Sarah, that kind. Of love can't be acted. James found her still staring at the article, her face pale. "I'm so sorry," he said. "The reporter caught me outside work. I tried to keep it vague, but it's not your fault," Marie interrupted. "You handled it perfectly. It's just—" She gestured to her phone, open to international news sites. Once one person makes the connection, on her screen, European. And tabloids were already speculating. Photos of the Liechtenstein palace, of Marie at her last public appearance, of the Duke of Luxembourg at recent events. Headlines screaming about runaway royalty and scandal. "They'll find me soon," she said quietly. "It's just a matter of time." As if summoned by her words, a sleek black car pulled up outside. 2 men in expensive suits emerged, their movements practiced and purposeful. Marie recognized the younger one, Victor, her family's head of security, the man who'd taught her self-defense since childhood. "Take Sarah's room," James said quickly, reading her tension. "It connects to the fire escape." "I'll handle them." Marie slipped away just as the knock came. Through the thin walls, she heard James answer, his voice casual but firm. "Good morning, gentlemen. Can I help you?" "Mr. Cooper." Victor's accent was barely noticeable, his tone professionally pleasant. "We represent the Liechtenstein consulate. We believe you may have information about—" "Sorry," James interrupted. "Like I told the reporter, I just helped someone who needed it. Isn't that what anyone would do?" "Of course." A new voice, smoother. "And such kindness should be rewarded. The consulate would be happy to demonstrate its appreciation for any helpful information." Marie pressed her hand to her mouth, hearing the implied bribe, but James's response was immediate and firm. "No appreciation necessary. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get to work." "Mr. Cooper." Victor again, all pretense of pleasantness gone. "You should understand that harboring certain individuals could have international implications for everyone involved." The threat was clear. Marie moved toward the door, ready to reveal herself to protect this family that had protected her. But James spoke first, his voice carrying an authority she'd never heard before. "And you should understand that this is America, gentlemen. I don't need to answer questions from foreign agencies about guests in my home. If you have legitimate concerns, feel free to work through proper diplomatic channels. Otherwise, please leave before I call BCPD about harassment." Silence followed, then retreating footsteps. Marie waited until she heard the car drive away, before emerging. James stood at the window, watching the street. "They'll be back," she said softly. "I know." He turned to face her. "With warrants, probably. Real ones this time." Marie sank onto Sarah's bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and crayon masterpieces. "You could have told them, taken the reward. God knows you could use it with Sarah's dental work coming up." James sat beside her, the small bed creaking under their combined weight. "You know, when Sarah's mother left, I learned something important about choices. Sometimes the right one is the harder one. And this, defying international authorities, that's the right choice? Protecting someone He stopped, reformulated. "Protecting family is always the right choice." Marie's breath caught at the word family. Before she could respond, her phone chimed with a news alert. The Boston Globe had picked up the story, expanding it. "Mystery woman's identity sparks international interest." It's like a fairy tale. The article quoted a local bookstore owner who'd seen Marie and Sarah during their library visits. "The way she carries herself, how she lights up around that little girl. If you told me she was a princess in disguise, I'd believe it." James read over her shoulder, his presence warm and solid beside her. "They're writing the story wrong," he said finally. "Oh? They think it's about a princess hiding in Boston." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "But it's really about a woman brave enough to choose her own path, even if that path leads away from a crown." Marie looked at their joined hands, his bearing the marks of practical work, hers still showing the faint indentation of her signet ring. And if that path is about to be blocked by international treaty obligations and centuries of duty, James's grip tightened. "Then we'll find another way. Together." Outside, another news van drove slowly past their building, its satellite dish searching for a signal, hunting for a story about a runaway princess. Inside, in a little girl's bedroom filled with drawings of the family she wished for, a real-life fairy tale was taking an unexpected turn. The palace photograph slipped from Sarah's backpack during morning reading time, scattering her classmates like startled birds. There, in glossy color, stood Marie, Princess Maria Thérese, resplendent in a blue gown and tiara, posed formally with the Liechtenstein royal family. "That's my Marie," Sarah had exclaimed proudly, not understanding why her teacher's face had gone pale, why phones had emerged throughout the classroom, why within minutes the school secretary was hurrying her to the office where James and Marie already waited. Now they sat in their living room, the photograph between them on the coffee table, while outside news vans lined their quiet street. Sarah's principal had been understanding, arranging a discreet exit through the gym, but the story was already breaking across international media. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered, her small face crumpled with worry. "I just wanted to show my friends the pretty picture Mrs. Martinez helped me find online." Marie gathered the child into her arms. "Oh, Liebling, you have nothing to be sorry for. Sometimes secrets are too heavy for little shoulders to carry." James picked up the photograph, studying it with new eyes. Marie stood slightly apart from her family in the image, her smile perfect but distant. Nothing like the warm laughter she shared with Sarah over breakfast. "The treaty signing is tomorrow," Marie said quietly, stroking Sarah's hair. "In Luxembourg." "And the wedding?" James asked, his voice carefully neutral. 3 days after." Marie's fingers trembled slightly. "Everything's been arranged. The guest list, the ceremony, the alliance that will follow, hundreds of lives improved. Through new trade agreements and diplomatic ties, all perfectly logical." "But not perfect," Sarah said suddenly, looking up. "Perfect is when you make pancakes with Daddy and teach me to dance and read me stories with all the right voices." Marie's composure cracked. A tear slid down her cheek, then another. "My darling girl, sometimes grown-ups have to—" She was interrupted by a firm knock. Through the window they could see dark suits, official cars, cameras. The world had found them, Your Highness. Victor's voice carried through the door. The car is waiting. Please don't make this more difficult than necessary. James stood, his decision visible in the set of his shoulders. You don't have to go. James, no, listen. This is America. They can't force you to leave, to marry, to be someone you don't want to be. Marie touched the photograph, her past self staring back with dutiful eyes. They don't have to force me. Duty does that well enough on its own. The knocking grew more, insistent. Sarah clung tighter to Marie, and for a moment the princess mask slipped completely. I never meant for any of this, Marie whispered. I just wanted a few days to be myself, to know what it felt like to be loved for who I am, not what I represent. She looked at James. To fall in love without treaties and titles between us. James crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling both Marie and Sarah into his arms. Then, stay, he breathed against her hair. Stay and we'll figure it out. Sarah needs you. I need... Your Highness! Victor again. The press is gathering. We need to move now. Marie disentangled herself gently, wiping her eyes. They watched as she transformed before them, spine straightening, chin lifting, emotions. Carefully tucked away, Princess Maria Thérese emerged like a butterfly from a chrysalis, beautiful but somehow less real than their Marie. Sarah, my darling, she said softly, kneeling to eye level. Thank you for showing me what family truly means. She pressed something into the girl's hand, her lucky library card. Keep reading stories, even the ones without perfect endings. To James, she said nothing for a long moment, just touched his face with trembling fingers. Then she whispered, Thank you for teaching me what it means to be real. Before either could respond, she opened the door. Victor stood with an escort of suits and security, relief visible on his face. Cameras flashed from the street as Marie stepped out, head high. The Princess of Liechtenstein was briefly delayed by inclement weather, she announced clearly, her accent crisp and formal. She is now returning to fulfill her obligations to her people. No further statements will be made. James and Sarah watched from the window as Marie was escorted to a waiting car. Just before she ducked inside, she glanced back. For a split second, the princess mask slipped, and then Marie looked at them one last time. Then she was gone, leaving only the photograph on their coffee table, a ghost of who she had been before love showed her who she could be. Sarah picked up the picture, then deliberately turned it face down. Daddy, she said with the simple wisdom of children, in real fairy tales, doesn't love win in the end? James gathered his daughter close, watching the motorcade disappear around the corner. Yes, princess, he said softly. In real fairy tales, it does. Marie's diary lay open on the guest room bed, forgotten in her hasty departure. James found it while helping Sarah gather Marie's things at the request of the royal staff, who would return for them later. The leather-bound journal's pages were filled with her elegant script, the last entry still fresh. My dearest Sarah and James, if you find this, I've already left. There are so many things I couldn't say out loud, truths that would have made goodbye impossible. So I write them here, in this quiet moment before dawn, watching the sunrise over your ordinary, extraordinary neighborhood. Sarah, you taught me that family isn't about titles or tradition. It's about pancake breakfasts and bedtime stories, and holding hands while crossing the street. Your drawings will always have a place of honor in my heart, even if they can't hang in palace galleries. James, you showed me what it means to love without protocol or pretense. In your small apartment, I found something grander than any castle. A home built on kindness, trust, and unguarded hearts. The entry ended abruptly, as if she'd been interrupted mid-thought. James closed the diary gently, adding it to the box of her belongings. Can I keep her cookbook? Sarah asked, clutching the worn volume. She said she'd teach me to make the Christmas cookies. Before James could answer, a news van's satellite dish scraped against their second-story window, making them both jump. The media circus outside had grown hourly since Marie's departure that morning. Prince Charming's modern twist, Boston's single dad captures princess's heart, one headline screamed. Royal romance or diplomatic crisis, demanded another. Their phone rang constantly with interview requests and offers from tabloids. Mrs. Martinez appeared at their door with groceries and determination. You can't live on cereal forever, she declared, shouldering past a photographer, and those vultures need to learn about privacy. She set about making dinner while James helped Sarah with homework, trying to maintain normalcy. But the empty chair at their small table spoke volumes. They're saying mean things about Marie on TV, Sarah said suddenly, pushing away her math worksheet. That she embarrassed her family. That she has to marry the Duke or bad things will happen. James traded looks with Mrs. Martinez. They'd tried to shield Sarah from the coverage, but news was everywhere. His daughter's next words made his heart ache. But Marie told me that real love is better than pretend love. So why does she have to pretend? Before James could formulate an answer, his phone buzzed with a text from an international number. Turn on Euronews now. Mrs. Martinez found the channel on her tablet. There was Marie. No, Princess Maria Thérese, stepping off a private jet in Luxembourg. She wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than James's yearly salary, her hair swept into an elegant chignon, every inch the royal they'd first glimpsed in Sarah's discovered photograph. But James saw what the cameras missed, the slight tremor in her hands as she waved, the brightness in her eyes that suggested unshed tears, the way she touched her pocket, where her lucky library card had been. The Princess of Liechtenstein arrived today to finalize preparations for the historic treaty signing, the announcer intoned. Sources say her brief American sojourn was a pre-approved cultural exchange. Though speculation runs rampant about her time with a Boston family, James muted the coverage as Sarah climbed into his lap. She looks sad, his daughter observed, like how you looked after Mom left when you thought I was sleeping. Mrs. Martinez wiped her eyes with her apron. That girl is stronger than she knows, she said firmly. And sometimes the strongest choice is walking away from what you want to do what you must. But it's not fair, Sarah protested. No, Mija, it's not. Mrs. Martinez began gathering dishes. But you're Marie. She taught you about real love, yes? Sometimes real love means making hard choices for the people who depend on you. James held Sarah closer, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. On the muted screen, Marie was greeting a distinguished-looking man. The Duke, James realized. Her smile was perfect, practiced, empty. Later, after Sarah was asleep, James returned to the guest room. Marie's scent, lavender and something distinctly her, still lingered. The diary sat in the box of her belongings, waiting for royal staff to reclaim it. He couldn't help himself. He opened to the last page again, finding a final line he'd missed. Before, written in hasty script at the very bottom, in fairy tales, love conquers all. But perhaps the truest love is knowing when to let go, even when it breaks your heart, even when the castle you truly want is a small apartment with crayon drawings on the fridge and dancing lessons in the living room. Outside, the media vans began packing up, chasing the next story. Tomorrow's headlines would move on to treaty details and wedding preparations. But in a quiet Boston apartment, a father and daughter held onto memories of their own private fairy tale, one where a princess chose love over duty, even if only for a little while. The official royal summons arrived on heavy cream stationery, embossed with the Liechtenstein coat of arms. Its formal language contrasted sharply with the coffee ring Sarah accidentally left on one corner during breakfast, by request of His Royal Highness Prince Johannes von Liechtenstein. The presence of Mr. James Cooper and Miss Sarah Cooper is requested at the signing of the European Economic Alliance Treaty. James read it twice, then a third time, while Sarah traced the golden emblem with careful fingers. Does this mean we get to see Marie? She asked, hope brightening her voice for the first time since Marie's departure 3 days ago. Before James could answer, A discreet knock announced the arrival of Victor, looking somehow both apologetic and official. "Mr. Cooper, the Crown has arranged transportation and appropriate attire. If you're willing, and if we're not," James challenged, though his heart raced at the possibility of seeing Marie again. Victor's professional mask slipped slightly. "Her Highness, Marie, she hasn't slept since returning. The treaty signing is in 6 hours, and she's meant to announce her formal engagement immediately after." He hesitated. "She doesn't know I'm here. This was her father's idea." Sarah tugged at James's sleeve. "Daddy, in my books, this is when the prince races to stop the princess's wedding." "This isn't a fairy tale, sweetheart," James said gently. But Victor interrupted. "With respect, Mr. Cooper, perhaps it should be." He pulled out his phone, showing them a news article. Public sentiment was turning. Photos of Marie's genuine interactions with Sarah had gone viral. Comments flooded social media about modernizing, monarchy, about love versus tradition. "The world is changing," Victor said quietly, "even royal worlds. His Highness, he remembers how much his daughter smiled in your kitchen, more than she has in years of palace life." James looked around their apartment, at the dance steps still marked on the carpet, the cookbook Marie left behind, the crayon drawings on the fridge, at Sarah's hopeful face. "We'll need 10 minutes to pack," he decided. The transformation that followed was dizzying. A sleek diplomatic car whisked them to a private airfield. On the flight to Luxembourg, a team of stylists turned James from an IT worker into something from the pages of GQ. Sarah delightedly submitted to having her hair styled like a proper princess. But it was the conversation with Prince Johannes, conducted via secure video call, that truly altered everything. "My daughter," the prince said, his accent thicker than Marie's, his face lined with both authority and concern, "has always done her duty. Since she was Sarah's age, she has carried the weight of centuries of tradition without complaint." He leaned closer to the camera. "But in your home, Mr. Cooper, she found something that all our privilege and protocol couldn't give her. A real family," Sarah piped up, then clapped her hand over her mouth, remembering her etiquette briefing. The prince's stern face softened. "Precisely, young lady. And perhaps it's time we learned something about family from you." As they began their descent into Luxembourg, Victor handed James a final piece of paper, a transcript of Marie's planned speech at the treaty signing. The words were formal, diplomatic, empty of the Marie they knew. "She hasn't approved this version yet," Victor said meaningfully. "There's still time for amendments." Sarah, dozing against James's shoulder in her new dress, stirred. "Are we going to rescue Marie?" James looked at the speech, then at the royal summons that had started. "This journey, no, princess," he said softly. "I think we're going to help Marie rescue herself." The Luxembourg Palace loomed before them, its flags snapping in the wind. Press cameras flashed as their car approached. Through the tinted windows, James caught glimpses of assembled dignitaries, security teams, and at the center of it all, a familiar figure in blue. Marie stood at the palace entrance, every inch the princess in her formal attire. But as their car pulled up, her perfect composure cracked just slightly. Even from a distance, James could see her hands trembling as she handed her prepared speech to an aide. Sarah pressed her face to the window. "She looks like she did in the photograph. All pretty, but pretend. Then let's remind her how to be real," James said, straightening his tie. As they stepped out into the Luxembourg sunshine, cameras whirring and reporters shouting questions, James felt the weight of Marie's diary in his inside pocket. Victor had insisted he bring it. Inside, beneath her last entry about letting go, he'd written his own. Some fairy tales aren't about rescuing princesses from towers. Sometimes they're about reminding them that they're strong enough to choose their own path. And that real love means never having to choose between duty and happiness, because true duty is being true to your heart. The palace doors opened, and Marie took a single step forward, protocol warring with desire on her face. Behind her, the Duke of Luxembourg watched with growing understanding. Above them all, Prince Johannes nodded once, almost imperceptibly. The next move would be Marie's, and this time she had a choice. The house deed trembled in Marie's hands, its official stamp still fresh. A modest three-bedroom home in Boston's suburbs, purchased by the Liechtenstein Royal Trust as part of what the press was calling the compromise. "It's not exactly a castle," James said softly, watching her trace the address with shaking fingers. "It's better," Marie whispered, remembering how they'd reached this moment. Just hours ago she'd stood before the assembled dignitaries, her prepared speech forgotten at the sight of James and Sarah in the palace doorway. The Duke of Luxembourg, Antoine, had been the first to break protocol, stepping forward with an understanding smile. "Your Highness," he'd said, loud enough for the press to hear, "I believe we've been trying to write the wrong kind of history." The memory played out like a dream. Antoine tearing up their marriage contract, her father's subtle nod, the unexpected applause from the gathered diplomats. The treaty, it turned out, didn't need a marriage to succeed, just mutual understanding and respect between nations. Now, standing in the sunlit kitchen of their new home, Marie watched Sarah explore every room, her excited voice echoing through. Empty spaces waiting to be filled with their own traditions. "And this room can be for teaching proper princess things," Sarah declared, spinning in what would become the study, "but also normal things like math and cookie baking." James laughed, the sound warming Marie more than any palace fireplace ever. "Speaking of proper things, don't you have some news to share at school tomorrow?" Sarah beamed. "I get to tell everyone that Marie is staying, but also that she's still a princess, but a different kind. A Boston kind, a modern kind," Marie corrected gently, setting down the deed to help Sarah unpack her backpack. "One who serves her people through cultural exchange and diplomatic education programs." The official title they'd created still felt new on her tongue, but far more comfortable than future Duchess of Luxembourg had ever been. The compromise had been elegantly simple in the end. Marie would maintain her royal status and duties, but base herself in Boston, where she'd establish a European-American cultural center. She would represent Liechtenstein's interests abroad while helping modernize the monarchy's approach to international relations. "It's quite revolutionary," her father had mused during the treaty signing. "A princess who chooses love and duty rather than sacrificing one for the other." The deed represented more than property. It was permission to write her own fairy tale, one where a princess could have a real home with crayon drawings on the fridge, weekend pancake traditions, and bedtime stories that didn't always end conventionally. "Look what I found," Sarah called from the living room. She held up Marie's cookbook, rescued from the apartment. "Can we make celebration cookies?" "First, we need to buy an oven," James pointed out pragmatically, "and possibly some walls that aren't beige." Marie laughed, the sound free and unrestrained, so different from her careful palace chuckle. "The royal decorators offered their services. I told them we prefer to make our own marks on our home." "Our home," James repeated softly, drawing her close. "You know, when I picked up a stranded woman in the rain, I didn't expect a fairy tale." "Reality," he corrected, kissing her temple. "Better than any fairy tale." Sarah appeared between them, clutching both their hands. "Does this mean I get to be a princess too?" Marie knelt to eye level with the girl who had first seen through her royal facade. "My darling, you've been a princess all along. The real kind, brave, kind, and true to yourself." Through the window, they could see Victor orchestrating the discreet security setup that would protect their privacy while maintaining Marie's royal status. The media had dubbed their story the Boston Fairy Tale, but they would write the everyday chapters themselves. "There will still be protocol," Marie warned, suddenly serious. "Public appearances, royal obligations, diplomatic events." James pulled her back up into his arms. "And there will still be burnt toast, homework struggles, and Sunday morning cartoons. We'll balance it all together." Marie picked up the deed again, running her fingers over their names printed side by side. In the vault in Vaduz Castle, another document waited. A marriage license to be signed when they were ready, combining centuries of tradition with the simple love that had bloomed in a modest Boston apartment. "The movers are here," Victor called from outside, with Her Highness's personal items from the palace. "Tell them to put the tiaras in the kitchen," Marie called back, making Sarah giggle, next to the cookie jar. As the sun set on their first day home, Marie watched James and Sarah directing traffic, this box here, that furniture there. Her royal possessions mingled with their modest belongings, creating something entirely new. Like their family, it wasn't conventional, but it was perfectly them. The deed found its place on the mantel, next to Sarah's first family drawing, the one with the empty space that wasn't empty anymore. Their home wouldn't have palace gardens or gilded halls, but it had something better, the freedom to be themselves, together. The modified family crest hung in their entryway, its elegant design capturing their unique story. The traditional Liechtenstein royal arms now incorporated new elements. A book representing Sarah's love of learning, crossed computer keys for James's practical wisdom, and a simple wooden spoon celebrating the kitchen where their love had first bloomed. "It's perfectly improper," Marie's sister had laughed during her first visit. "The royal genealogists are having fits. I absolutely love it." The crest had become something of a symbol in the press. Modernizing monarchy, how love rewrote the key rules, one headline declared. Marie's decision to choose both love and duty had sparked conversations about tradition versus progress across Europe's royal houses. This morning, as Sarah proudly wore her princess-in-training badge to school, a compromise between royal protocol and elementary school dress codes, Marie prepared for her first official function in their new dual life. The Cultural Center's opening ceremony would unite Boston's community leaders with European diplomats. "Your tiara's crooked," James observed, helping her adjust it in their bedroom mirror. "Though I still think the Red Sox cap would make a better statement." Marie laughed, the sound echoing through their home, no longer a palace, not quite a regular house, but perfectly them. "Save that for the baseball diplomacy initiative next month. Today we're being properly royal, properly royal." He echoed, straightening his own tie. "You know, when I taught you to use our ancient coffee maker, I never thought I'd be learning proper fork placement in return." "Fair trade," Marie smiled, then sobered slightly. "Are you sure you're ready for this? Once we make this public appearance, together everything changes. The press, the protocol, the pressure." James turned her away from the mirror to face him. "Hey, I fell in love with Marie, who burned toast and taught my daughter to waltz, the princess part. That's just extra credit." From downstairs, Sarah's voice called out, "Mrs. Martinez says we're going to be late," and she made her special good luck empanadas. Their neighbor had appointed herself unofficial royal normal life translator, helping the family navigate their unique situation with practical wisdom and unfailing humor. Her empanadas had already become legendary among the security staff. The cultural center itself was a masterpiece of diplomatic design, elegant enough for royal functions, but welcoming enough for community events. Today's ceremony would officially launch Marie's new role, a princess who bridged worlds rather than being trapped by them. Sarah skipped through the grand entrance, her school backpack clashing cheerfully with the formal decorations. "Remember," she announced, "Mrs. Martinez says we're just like our special crest, fancy and normal, all mixed up perfectly." Marie touched the crest pin on her lapel, a miniature version of their family symbol. The royal genealogists had indeed protested its unorthodox design, until her father had quietly pointed out that love had always been the true foundation of any lasting legacy. The morning news played on Victor's security tablet. Princess Marie, as she's now known in Boston, has revolutionized the concept of royal duty. Sources say other European houses are following her example, exploring ways to maintain tradition while embracing modern love stories. "They're calling it the Boston Protocol," Victor reported, not quite hiding his smile. the idea that royal duty can evolve without being abandoned. James helped Sarah with her coat, while Marie reviewed her speech one last time. The words were different from the ones she'd almost given at the treaty signing. These were real, honest, born from the heart, rather than protocol. "Ready?" James asked softly. Marie looked at her family, her decidedly unroyal, absolutely perfect family. Sarah, who saw through titles to the real person beneath. James, who had offered shelter to a stranger and love to a princess without asking for anything in return. Even Mrs. Martinez, arriving with her basket of empanadas, representing the community that had embraced their unusual story. "The press is assembled," Victor reminded gently, "and the Archbishop just arrived for the blessing." Marie squared her shoulders, feeling the weight of her tiara, lighter somehow when balanced by the love that surrounded her. Time to show the world that fairy tales can have modern endings. The family crest caught the morning light as they prepared to step outside, its new elements harmonizing with the ancient ones, just as their lives had found their own unique balance. Sarah took both their hands, forming their own kind of royal procession. "Remember," she whispered, "we're writing our own story." And so they were, princess and IT specialist, ancient dynasty and modern love, protocol and pancake Sundays, all captured in the crest that would mark their legacy. A family that chose love without sacrificing duty and found magic in the balance between two worlds. The wedding invitation defied centuries of royal protocol, just like the love story it announced. Crafted on handmade paper, it combined the formal grandeur of a state occasion with intimate details that were purely them. Tiny dancing steps bordered. The text, echoing the marks still visible on their first apartment's carpet, while watercolor cookies replaced traditional royal seals. Her Royal Highness Princess Maria Thérese Gabriella von Liechtenstein and Mr. James Michael Cooper joyfully invite you to celebrate their marriage where fairy tales meet real life. The ceremony would unite two worlds. Boston Commons Public Garden for the Vows, followed by a reception that would transform their cultural center into a space where diplomats and neighborhood friends could mingle comfortably. "The palace is having palpitations over the location," Marie admitted, watching Sarah practice her flower girl walk with Mrs. Martinez. "A royal wedding in a public park? Good thing you're not just any royal," James replied, sliding his arms around her waist. "You're our Boston princess." Sarah paused her practicing to study the invitation's elaborate calligraphy. "I like how it says, 'Fairy tales meet real life' instead of 'happily ever after.'" "Because real life is better," Marie said, smoothing Sarah's hair, "even with burnt toast and homework struggles and learning to balance two worlds." The guest list had been its own diplomatic achievement. European royalty would sit beside Boston IT professionals. Sarah's entire class had been invited, their excitement about attending a real princess wedding matching that of any dignitary. Mrs. Martinez had been given a place of honor, equal to any duchess. The invitation's most remarkable feature was a small note at the bottom. "In lieu of gifts, please contribute to the Boston Children's Library Fund, helping write new stories for future generations." The Duke of Luxembourg sent his response, Victor reported, entering with the morning's correspondence. "He's not only attending, but has offered to double all library donations made in your honor." Marie smiled, remembering Antoine's graceful step aside months ago. He'd since become one of their strongest allies in modernizing royal traditions, and his friendship had proved invaluable during the more challenging moments of their transition. "The press is calling it the People's Royal Wedding," Victor continued, showing them the morning headlines, though they're still debating the protocol implications of the bride wearing both a tiara and Red Sox cufflinks. The cufflinks were non-negotiable, James grinned. "If I'm becoming royal adjacent, I'm bringing Boston with me." Sarah twirled in her practice flower girl dress, a compromise between princess ball gown and practical comfort. Will there be cookie bouquets like in the invitation? Regular flowers make me sneeze. Cookie bouquets for you, Marie confirmed. Traditional flowers for the diplomatic pictures and books for the centerpieces. Something for everyone. The invitation had set the tone for the entire celebration, a bridge between protocol and personality, duty and love. European papers dubbed it revolutionary. Boston locals called it wicked perfect. Mrs. Martinez adjusted Sarah's crown of practice flowers. In my day, royal weddings were all about tradition. But this, she gestured to the invitation, with its dancing steps and cookies, this is about family, the real kind. The afternoon sun caught the invitation's watercolor details, making them shimmer. Like their love story, it was neither traditionally royal nor entirely common. It was uniquely them. The RSVPs are overwhelming, Victor noted, not just from the expected diplomatic circles. Local families, community leaders, even that coffee shop owner who first suspected Marie's identity. They all feel part of the story. They are part of the story, Marie said softly. Every person who helped us hide, who kept our secrets, who supported our choice to rewrite the rules. They're why this invitation exists at all. James picked up one of the invitations, running his fingers over the raised text that united their names, their worlds, their futures. You know, when I offered shelter to a stranger in the rain, I never imagined I'd be helping to modernize a monarchy, and I never imagined that running away would lead me home, Marie replied, reaching for his hand. Sarah gathered up her practice bouquet, her small face serious. Can we practice the walk again? I want it to be perfect. Perfect isn't about not making mistakes, Liebling, Marie reminded her. It's about being true to who you are. The invitation caught the light again, its dancing steps and cookies telling their story better than any formal proclamation could. Outside, Victor's team was already preparing for tomorrow's ceremony, transforming the public garden into a space where royal tradition could waltz comfortably with Boston charm. Like the invitation that announced it, their wedding would prove that the greatest traditions aren't the ones we inherit, but the ones we dare to create ourselves. The thank you cards were as unconventional as everything else about their wedding had been. Each one featured a photograph of the public garden ceremony, where golden autumn leaves had fallen like nature's confetti around the assembled guests. But it was the handwritten messages inside that captured the true spirit of their celebration. Dear Mrs. Martinez, Marie wrote, her elegant script flowing across the card, thank you not just for your attendance, but for teaching me that real nobility lies in how we treat each other. Your empanadas received higher praise than the royal catering, and your wisdom about blending families across all boundaries helped make our day perfect. The cards spread across their dining room table told the story of a wedding that had changed, more than just their lives. To Sarah's teacher, thanks for helping her classmates understand that real princesses wear Red Sox caps during the reception. To Mr. Patel, gratitude for the corner store's contribution of penny candy favors mixed with Belgian chocolates in defiance of protocol. The palace switchboard is overwhelmed, Victor reported, adding another stack of responses to the growing peal. Everyone who attended wants to share how the ceremony affected them. The Archbishop of Luxembourg had written a lengthy letter praising their innovation of including both religious traditions and community celebrations. The Duke's response spoke of inspiration for his own future choices, but it was the local responses that touched them most deeply. I've never seen anything like it, James read from one card, written by his IT department colleague. Diplomats dancing the electric slide with Boston cops, my kids playing tag with junior dukes and duchesses. It felt like a fairy tale. Coming true in real life, Sarah finished, carefully placing her own thank you notes, illustrated with crayon drawings, into envelopes. The wedding had indeed merged their worlds in unexpected ways. The formal ceremony had maintained the necessary royal dignity, with Marie resplendent in her grandmother's tiara. But when she'd switched to a Red Sox cap for the reception, leading everyone in Sweet Caroline, something magical had happened. Titles and positions had melted away, leaving only joy. The European press is still talking about the cookie bouquets, Victor said, showing them the latest headlines. And several royal houses have inquired about your community integration protocol for formal events. Marie smiled, remembering how Sarah had solved the flower versus cookie debate by suggesting they do both. Traditional bouquets for the ceremony, followed by Mrs. Martinez's famous cookie arrangements for the celebration. Like everything else about their union, it was about finding balance rather than choosing sides. Your father's thank you note arrived, James said softly, handling the heavy royal stationery. Marie opened it carefully. Inside, along with formal congratulations, her father had written a personal note. My dear daughter, watching you walk down the aisle in your grandmother's tiara, while your new daughter held a bouquet of cookies, I finally understood. True legacy isn't about preserving the past exactly as it was. It's about giving the next generation courage to honor tradition while writing their own stories. Sarah interrupted their reading by announcing that her entire class had sent individual thank you notes for being included. Jenny says her dad cried when the Boston Children's Choir sang with the Royal Orchestra. And Tommy's mom wants to know if we can do cookie bouquets at regular school events now. The dining room table disappeared under the outpouring of gratitude and joy from both their worlds. Each card, whether on royal stationery or notebook paper, spoke of barriers broken, connections made, traditions honored while new ones were born. We should frame this one, James said, holding up a photograph from the reception. It showed Marie teaching the Archbishop to fist bump while Sarah demonstrated the proper technique to a group of young royals. In the background, Mrs. Martinez could be seen explaining empanada recipes to the Luxembourg royal chef. Frame them all, Marie decided. Every thank you note, every photo, every crayon drawing. This is our real legacy. Not just merging two worlds, but showing everyone that love doesn't have to follow a script. The afternoon sun warmed the growing collection of cards, casting a glow over their shared gratitude. Outside, autumn leaves danced past their windows like nature's echo of the celebration that had transformed their community. Sarah carefully sealed another envelope, adding it to her stack. My teacher says we made history, she announced proudly. But Mrs. Martinez says we made something better. We made family. Marie and James exchanged glances over their daughter's head, remembering how their story had begun with a simple act of kindness in the rain. Now each thank you card reflected back the ripples of that moment, showing how choosing love over convention hadn't diminished tradition, but enriched it. Together, they continued writing their responses, each note carrying the same message. Thank you for being part of our story. One that proved fairy tales don't have to end at midnight. Sometimes they just need a little updating, a lot of love, and a few really good cookies. The new family portrait hung in the Cultural Centre's main hall, a striking contrast to the formal palace photograph that had first revealed Marie's identity. In this image, taken 1 year after their wedding, the royal formality had given way to something far more precious: authenticity. Marie sat on their garden swing, her tiara catching the sunset light but paired with James's old MIT sweatshirt. James stood behind her, one hand on the swing's rope, his other arm around Sarah, who perched on the swing's arm, wearing her princess-in-training badge with a Red Sox cap. Mrs. Martinez had somehow snuck into the background, emerging from their kitchen with a plate of her famous empanadas. Even Victor could be spotted, trying to look stern but failing to hide his smile. It's causing quite a stir in royal circles, Marie's father commented during his monthly visit. The first official royal portrait to include a baseball cap and comfort food. That's why it's perfect, Sarah declared, leading her grandfather through their home's latest improvements. The library they'd added now housed both ancient royal manuscripts and her growing collection of childhood favorites. The formal dining room doubled as a community meeting space, where diplomatic discussions shared time with neighborhood book clubs. Their experiment in modernizing monarchy had exceeded everyone's expectations. The Boston Protocol had become a model for other royal houses seeking to balance tradition with authenticity. Marie's cultural education programs had spread across Europe, promoting the idea that true nobility came from actions rather than titles. "Did you ever imagine this?" James asked Marie later that evening as they watched Sarah teaching their newest neighbor's children the proper way to curtsy while wearing soccer cleats. "When you were running away in the rain," Marie leaned into his embrace, her crown left, casually on the kitchen counter next to tomorrow's lunch preparations. "I was looking for escape," she admitted. "Instead, I found freedom." The portrait captured that freedom perfectly. It showed not just a family, but a bridge between worlds. The royal photographer had initially protested its informal nature, but even he had been won over by its genuine joy. Sarah's voice carried from the garden, where she was now organizing what she called a royal soccer tournament with the neighborhood kids. "Remember, you have to bow before you kick the ball. Those are the new rules." "Speaking of new rules," James said, "your father mentioned the European Council is considering adopting your education reforms." Marie smiled, remembering the latest diplomatic session where she'd presented her ideas for modernizing royal education. They're finally understanding that connecting with real people makes monarchy stronger, not weaker. Their home had become a proof of that philosophy. Daily, it hosted a mix of diplomatic meetings and community events. Children did homework in rooms decorated with both centuries-old tapestries and crayon masterpieces. The kitchen served state dinners and weekend pancake breakfasts with equal ceremony. The portrait showed all of this somehow. The way Sarah's confident smile matched her mother's royal poise. How James's protective stance behind them spoke of both strength and tenderness. The subtle inclusion of their community, represented by Mrs. Martinez's warm presence. "The palace sent another formal portrait request," Victor mentioned, entering with the evening security report. "I told them we already have the only official portrait we need." He was right. This image, with its perfect blend of dignity and joy, had done more for royal relations than any formal state picture could have. It showed a modern fairy tale, one where happily ever after meant being true to yourself while honoring your responsibilities. Sarah bounded in from the garden, grass stains on her dress, but her princess wave perfect. "Can we have story time in the library? I want to read the new ones Grandpa brought about our family history." "With one condition," Marie said, her eyes twinkling. "We add our own chapter at the end." As they settled into their reading nook, Sarah between them and their family portrait watching over them, James marveled at how natural it all felt now. The security detail outside, the diplomatic papers on his desk, the royal crest above their door, all just parts of their uniquely blended life. "Once upon a time," Sarah began reading, "a princess learned that the grandest castle is any place where love makes itself a home." Marie and James exchanged glances over their daughter's head, both remembering that rainy night that had started their story. In the portrait above them, that same love shone clearly, a love that had not just changed their lives, but had helped reshape what was possible when tradition and heart learned to dance together. Outside, Boston's evening settled over their garden, where royal roses grew alongside Mrs. Martinez's tomato plants. Inside, a family continued writing their own kind of fairy tale, proving that sometimes the most magical endings are the ones we dare to write ourselves.